Tyrion's weep o'er his hall with no one there to hear. Hey! Welcome to the Spoilercast, everybody.
Spoilercast!
This is for episode 6.
Spoilercast.
The Laws of Gods and Men.
The Laws of Gods and Men. And wow.
And I think the only law that matters to us as viewers is that Tyrion is the boss.
Wow. That's all I can say right now. Wow.
I'd love to talk about the episode in chronological order, but we just finished watching it, and really, I think the only part that matters was Tyrion.
Was Tyrion's trial, yes.
That, it was a kangaroo court. Let's be straight up. They don't have kangaroos in Westeros, but that's what it was.
It was a kangaroo court.
Whether they know it or not, they might have called it something else, but it was a kangaroo court.
I want to start with the trial, but we got to get there. If we start talking about the trial, we're going to talk about the trial for 45 minutes.
Right.
And we're never going to get around to anything else. We're going to be like, this is the longest episode we've ever done. So, let's try to... I'll try to rein it in a little bit. We'll talk about other things that happened in the episode first.
A lot happened this episode. I mean,
a lot did.
That's the big standout moment, but, we started... in Bravos. Right. With Stannis and Davos visiting the Iron Bank.
Yeah, we can't forget about that.
Trying to get a loan, basically saying, basically trying to get a loan and to have them back Stannis financially versus the Lannisters.
To fight the Lannisters, right.
And it worked because Davos gave a very impassioned and pretty awesome speech.
Great
where he
speech.
ripped off his gloves, showed his severed fingers. And basically, show that, hey, this is Stannis. He always pays his debts. The Lannister says they pay their debts. They don't. They just borrow more money from someone else to pay off the...
Right.
They're taking from Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
So that's the Lannisters. But Stannis, and Davos really put that forth. This is a man of honor and integrity. He's a battle commander, and he's literally the only rightful heir left alive. And
he's in his prime.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Tywin is 67 years old. He's going to die soon. And when he does, who's going to be in charge? Are you guys going to deal with Cersei or Tommen? So it was effective. So he got his loot.
He did.
He got Stannis to loot, and then he ran to his old pirate buddy, Salladhor Saan, in the public baths, which looked very, very nice. I kind of want to chill in there for a day or two.
Yes, that would be nice.
Just relax. But he found his old buddy. He's like, "Hey, we set sail in the morning," and Salladhor's like, "What do you mean we?"
Right. And then you're gonna make me die a poor poor young man or something like that.
Yeah, you make me die poor and away from home.
Right.
And he's like, well, you are going to leave home, but you won't be poor. And he tosses all his money. Salladhor sees that it's got the Iron Bank symbol printed on the coin. Had that look like shit just got real.
Shit did just get real, man. And it's definitely one of those things. We're seeing the trial of Tyrion and all that, but this also implements that the bank is no longer backing the Lannisters and the Lannister royal family. So that's going to come up at some points.
And it's like the banker said, you over on your side of the sea, you use words like bloodline and birthright and all that. Over here, we have numbers.
Right.
The numbers tell us the entire story. And Davos did a really good job of convincing them that the numbers are not in favor of the Lannisters.
Right.
That if you're going to go by the numbers, Stannis is the safer bet. So that was cool. It was really nice to see that Davos not only adapted, but then was successful.
Right.
That he understood, Stannis is a little bit too rigid.
Stannis was done.
Too prideful.
Yeah, he got up and he was ready to leave, and that was going to be the end of it.
But Davos, he, I think with his experience with pirates and other people, Stannis was a prince, lord.
Right, he was a lord.
He never really has to deal with money in a realistic sense.
Right.
Davos has his whole life.
Well, Davos even calls the bankers lord, and we don't have that title here.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
But they might as well be.
Right.
For all the power they have. And, maybe, I don't know, we didn't see the entire thing, but what if all of a sudden the bank decides that we're just going to call in our debts here on the Lannisters, we're not loaning you any more money, and you got to pay us back what you have loaned. If they ever call that card, the Lannisters are fucked.
And that's why I'm interested.
Braavos is going to own like half of the fucking Seven Kingdoms.
Right, and that's why I'm interested. That's going to happen. I feel like that is going to happen at some point in the near future.
Have you ever known a bank not to call in its debts?
Right, exactly.
At the worst possible moment for you.
And that's what. And now that they're backing Stannis, they are going to do it at their worst possible time.
But it's smart too. You know, it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, you can bet on the long shot at the horse races, but it's probably better to bet on multiple horses in the same race.
Right.
You know, that's what they're doing. They're betting on pretty much every horse in the race. I wouldn't be surprised.
So whoever takes over does.
I wouldn't be surprised if they have people that are representatives trying to meet with Daenerys on the side off screen.
Oh yeah, probably.
Why not?
Right.
You know, you're a bank, so you're going to have money. So if you lose a little money because this king dies to that king, it's kind of a wash.
At least that king.
You have a relationship with the person that won.
Exactly.
So
it is a good idea. So I definitely see what you're saying there.
It's the pure capitalistic way.
Right.
You know, you put your money on both sides of the fight. Therefore, you can't lose.
It's like having a cosigner type deal.
Yep.
Ish. Big terms. Yeah.
Yeah. Banking. Yeah.
But yeah, so we had that's definitely a big point of this episode.
Yep. We got to see Yara again. Finally, she made it in to rescue her brother. She made it to the Dreadfort.
She made it into the Dreadfort. She made it into the kennels.
Yeah,
where he was being kept.
She had him out of his little doggy cage, his little kennel, and he thought it was a trick. Like, he straight up thought he was being tricked, and that, you know,
he was going to be punished.
Yeah, he wouldn't leave. He was afraid, and he actually actively resisted her and even fought back to stay in his kennel.
Right.
And then Ramsay shows up with some of his guys. Yara cleans house. You know, her and the Ironborn, there were still 3 or 4 of them left when Ramsay was by himself. But then he released the dogs, and they just got out of there because she realized that Theon's too far gone.
Right.
You know,
she said herself, "My brother's dead." So
yeah, which was sad.
It is.
It was really sad because it's like, you know, she'd received a letter and a parcel from Ramsay containing Theon's favorite toy.
Right.
And then after that scene, we got to see Reek. I guess we should just call him Reek because that's what he is now.
Pretty much, yeah.
Being rewarded for his loyalty with a warm bath.
The entire time that scene was going on, please don't show it. Please don't.
Yeah.
I don't want to see it.
Please don't take his pants off. And then, like, when he did, I'm like, please, camera, stay above the waist, stay. Good,
and, you know,
good.
it's HBO. They could have if they wanted to, I'm sure.
Yeah, and they didn't.
And I think that was the whole point. Like, it was shot. The directors are like, "Oh, we're going to tease it. We're not going to do it, though. We're going to tease it."
But it's going to be in everybody's mind the entire time. That there's some bad shit going on right there. And we're going to keep the camera maybe, you know, a couple inches above, like the bottom of the frame.
Right.
But it's going to be close.
But it's there.
And you know it's there.
You know it's there.
And so, yeah.
You just want to know, are we going to show you it or not?
It was quite disturbing. But
right.
Then when he's in the bath, Ramsay is actually using a rag and washing the Reek's back for him, and he's like, "I have a job for you, Reek," and he's gonna have Reek go to, I think it's Deepwood Mott is the castle name, the Holdfast, where there's still Ironborn. That's where Yara's. She conquered that one. That's kind of her base, and basically he's being sent to help Ramsay get rid of all the bad men at that castle.
I want you to act like someone that you aren't.
Yeah, that was just seeing how, you know, and
much control he has over him.
We got to give Alfie Allen a lot of credit for his acting.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because he legitimately looked like a terrified, timid little bunny rabbit.
Right.
Like every time Ramsay would even touch him, he'd freak out.
Right.
Like, he was just, had this... He looked like a nervous wreck.
He did. He definitely played up someone that was tortured to the point of just fear.
Yeah.
Irreplaceable fear. You know what I mean? Like...
Yeah, it was really disheartening to see. Considering, you remember Theon from Season 1 and Season 2, and, seeing it now...
so proud, yeah.
Yeah, it's it is a whole new character, and that's kind of the point. And Ramsay tells him, I'm going to have you go to this castle, but you're going to play a role for me. You're going to pretend to be somebody you're not. You're going to pretend to be Theon Greyjoy.
Right.
And, hearing that, you're just like, oh my god, it's such psychological fuckery.
Right. It's like, where's this... I want to see how that's going to come into play.
Yeah.
Just how he's going to use it. Because obviously, he's going to prance him out there. And in front of the troops or whatever.
Prance him out.
He's going to prance him out there.
He's going to do a little prancing and maybe a little...
Dude, he could probably make him do it if he wanted to.
A little carrying on.
But yeah, he's gonna walk him and march him out there in front of in front of his troops. And then, make him think that he's escaped, or I don't know what the play is, but...
Yeah, it's going to be interesting either way. And again, I love the way that this show is not afraid to really take characters that we know and we may like, or at least you understand, and then just completely push them to the limit, to the breaking point and beyond.
Right.
And make us have to sit there and go with them and have to watch. That's the thing. It's like in the books, all this happens to Theon off screen because he's not a POV character until the 5th book, the most recent one. So while all this torture is happening to him,
it's all off. Yeah,
I mean, you think he dies in book 2 when Ramsay and his troops take Winterfell. That's it. You don't. There
you go. Theon's dead.
Yeah, you don't think anymore. And then all of a sudden, book 5, you get a chapter, and the title of the chapter, which is the characters' names always, it says Reek. And then you start reading it. Yeah, it takes you the way it's written. You don't understand who it is until almost to the end of the chapter, and then you're like, oh my god, this is Theon. So it's interesting. It's almost worse being there every step of the way,
right? And
seeing just the horror.
Yeah, just the dog of a man that he's become.
Yeah, and it's uncomfortable, but I'm happy to see more of just the acting being done between Alfie Allen and Iwan Raven, who plays Ramsay.
Right.
Because he's a great actor too. I really liked him in Misfits, and so I was happy when he was cast to be in Game of Thrones, and now I'm really enjoying the scenes they have together. Just because it's more than any other kind of scene or set in the show, it's all psychological.
Right.
Even the very brutal violence or torture, it's all very psychological. And so that's kind of the one part of the show where they're really doing a lot of method work for both actors. So I'm enjoying the hell out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I loved him in Misfits too. I actually didn't even realize it was the same person until you said that. I'm like, holy shit, yeah, he was in Misfits.
Yeah, man. He's Simon.
He was Simon. And that just shows you his acting chops on top of it.
Yeah, because Simon's a very different character from Ramsay
definitely.
Snow.
That's why I was like, I didn't even realize it until you said that. I was like, holy shit, he was Simon. But yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. It's the psychological aspect of it is really moving. You know what I mean? Even not just oh, poor Theon. It's just kind of like you realize he's this person thinks he's a freaking dog. You know what I mean? He's a beaten dog.
It's one of those things you hear about this stuff happening. These this level of kind of codependence and depravity that people can do to one another. But to see it on the show, I haven't seen a whole lot of TV shows on any network that have kind of gone that place. And this show has done it, and it hasn't been afraid.
Right.
And it's good. It's definitely a nice contrast to say Daenerys' story, where she's learning. Theon learned how to survive. He was raised a lord. He was basically a hostage, but he was raised in a very benevolent place in Winterfell.
Right.
The Stark family were better to him than he could have ever hoped to have anybody be.
Right.
And I'm sure he realized that at some point. But he was very fortunate to be raised even by the Starks instead of his own family. He got probably the best possible life he could hope for there.
Right.
And now, he basically had to. He got it all thrown away. Well, he threw it all away himself. He tried to take Winterfell to impress his father.
Right.
And to try to one-up his sister. And it backfired horribly on him. And now we're seeing Daenerys having to deal with repercussions of her actions for really the first time.
Right.
As long as we've seen her on the show, at first she wasn't really and she didn't have much agency over what was happening. But she started to very slowly develop that. And it got to the point then, near the end of the first season, where she had all the agency in the world. She was in control of her own destiny. And then she started kind of trying to build something of her own. And it came to a climax when she took Meereen.
Right.
And now, instead of moving on, which has always been kind of her MO, like we said, she was... she kind of had the Dothraki mindset of attack, pillage, and leave.
Right. That's how she knew how to rule. Even when she was small, like when the if I can say their name right, the Targaryens.
Targaryen. Yeah.
The Targaryens. When the Targaryens were in rule, when she was just a baby. You know what I mean? So.
Well, she was she was born after they were already.
After they had sacked it, or
right when they were being overthrown, basically. Right. She was born on Dragonstone in the middle of a horrible storm. Right. And then her mother died in childhood, who was like the sister to the king.
So she never actually saw or experienced ruling.
No, her whole life has basically been running.
Right.
Until she kind of got to the Dothraki, and then instead of running away from something, she was running towards things. Right. And so that was that first kind of shift. She went from being someone that was always running away from her past to someone that was running towards the future.
Right.
And then when Khal Drogo died, and then she got her dragons, and then she was no longer running towards her future, she was kind of marching with a purpose, straight ahead. Maybe blinders on a little bit, but her pace changed from being someone that was always feeling like she was just one step ahead of her executioners to someone who was now. Was kind of the executioner one step behind her prey.
Right.
She became the hunter.
Right. And, this episode really signified... I know the last episode we talked... She was like, I'm going to rule now and stay here and rule for a while. But this one really signified how she was just leaving trails of burnt land, burnt farmland in her wake, basically. And people were building behind her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is really... This episode really showed how much that was affecting her, you know what I mean? Like, how much she didn't really know about actually ruling.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of interesting because, like we said, she'd always kept moving on. Now that she's staying still, the past has a chance to catch up with her.
Right.
And now she's having to see 200 supplicants in a day who all want something from her.
Right.
Instead of her just giving orders and the army moving on, she's having to sit there and people are coming to her.
Right.
And she's having to listen to them and then either help them or not help them. One case we had the goat farmer, the herder, that her dragons killed all his goats. He had no more livelihood. And she took responsibility, paid him for each goat 3 times their normal value.
Right.
To make sure he wasn't left with nothing.
Right.
And so it's like you see, okay, she still has that, kind of charitable heart that she always looks out for the little guy. And then the next person was the son of one of the masters, who was angry with her for crucifying his dad because his dad had spoken out against the crucifixion of all the slave children.
Right.
But she had killed him anyway, just because she did that broad kind of stroke. That 162 masters are going to be, crucified for what happened.
Right.
And she didn't listen to the Council of Ser Barristan. And we're seeing now she had the repercussions of that he was not, he didn't kowtow to her wills. Like when she said, "Oh, it's justice," he's like, it was not justice. He's like, I love my father. Now he's dead. Right. And he didn't do this. Right. But you killed him anyway. So all I'm asking is that you take the body down so I can bury him. Right. She's like, well, what about the slave children? He's like, I can't speak for the masters. I'm not one of them. I'm just a son. Right. That lost his father. Right. And so she got to kind of see that. Yeah. She kind of seen the Meereenese, like the people that basically everybody who wasn't a slave was an enemy to her. Now she's seeing that there's kind of these shades of gray. It's not so black and white. Right. That there are people that were basically just caught in in the middle and have suffered as a result. Goat herders, even masters and their families that weren't on board with what the consensus maybe was. Right. So she's going to be hard learning, obviously.
It definitely is. I think that it really showed her that having to talk to him and having to go through all that really showed her the repercussions of her actions, like you said.
Yeah, for the first time.
Yeah.
She did see it a little bit back in season 1 when, Khal Drogo, was basically got, mortally wounded to defend her because she didn't want to let the Dothraki rape slaves. Mm-hmm. And she saved them, and then they were mad that they basically took away what they felt was their prize.
Right.
And then the result of her doing that ended up leading to his death, and then she tried to, trusted in this one slave to bring Khal Drogo back, which she did, technically, but then it cost her unborn child, and it's like, that was then. But I think ever since she got the dragons, she kind of felt almost, bulletproof. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of the first time we're going to start seeing some, chinks in the armor.
Right.
Because she's not bulletproof.
Right.
And we're going to start realizing that making the right choice doesn't always necessarily feel like the morally righteous thing to do. Right. Sometimes, obviously it would have been better maybe to show mercy to the masters, or maybe you'd have some allies with influence here, people that understand the city,
right,
and that you can rein them in and make them better.
Right.
But she felt death has to be met with death. She's very eye for an eye because of her experiences. Right. And she's going to learn, as a ruler, that's a very poor mindset to have. Right. Joffrey had that mindset too. Mm-hmm. Although he was almost more, I'm going to take your eye before you take mine.
Right.
So, just because she's, a pretty great character, and we like
she does have her flaws.
We like her. Yeah, she's not a perfect ruler, and she's got to learn that ruling is a high wire act. You got to balance.
Right.
She's up there on the wire. She's got spinning plates on her hands, and she's got like a ball on her forehead. She's trying to balance. It's and she's on a unicycle.
And now that she's doing all that, she's actually gotten more attention from the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah, that was interesting because then they segued immediately into that small council where Tywin was like, all of them, and especially Tywin and Oberyn and Varys were cautioning, like, we have to do something about this.
It's time to start taking action against the girl across the sea.
The Meister, the old fucking idiot, and Mace Tyrell, the puppet, and Cersei are just like, she's just a child. And then it's like, a child with 8,000 unsullied and 2,000 sellswords and 3 dragons.
Right.
And they're like,
and even,
baby dragons. It's like, they get bigger every year.
Yeah, they're getting bigger every year. But even, the Viper.
Oberyn.
Oberyn was like, I spent time in Meereen. Or not in Meereen,
Essos.
Essos.
That's the name of the entire continent. Like, you have Westeros, and then you have Essos, and there's also Southros.
Okay.
So it's kind of a geographical.
And he's like, I've seen the Unsullied. He's like, they're very hard fighters. Not very good in the sack, though.
Yeah. Like, very impressive on the battlefield. Not so impressive in bed.
And so, it was really...
that's kind of his character in a nutshell, really.
Pretty much, yes. And so it's really... That's how's that going to play in everything? Everything is starting to come together. Yeah. Like, the threads are starting to connect, and I'm really excited for that, because...
Yeah, well, then I love the scene immediately following that in the throne room with Prince Oberyn and Varys.
Oh, yeah. We haven't seen Varys. This is the first time we've seen Varys this season.
No, he's been around.
Has he? Because I don't remember, thinking back, I haven't seen him at all.
He was around, during the wedding stuff, and, he hasn't been,
Well, we've seen him, but this is the first time we've seen him. You know what I mean?
He hasn't had, any major scenes by himself, but he's been,
in the background.
Yeah, he's been, there have been scenes where he's been talking with people, and, he's been part of it. He had a little scene with the Queen of Thorns at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, he did. You're right.
He's been around, but, that's kind of his thing. He's always...
He kind of stays in the back.
Yeah, they call him the Spider for a reason.
Right.
Spiders, you don't see spiders until until they're right on top of you.
Like,
you don't see a spider coming from across the field.
Right.
So, I like that scene with Oberyn where they kind of were... it was like that scene in the first season with Littlefinger and Varys where they kind of, through having a casual, quote-unquote, conversation, you really kind of work out their motivations and who they are. Mm-hmm. And Varys talks about... Oberyn asked before he was, castrated if he liked boys. Varys is like, no. He's like, oh, really? Girls? Oh, okay.
I never would have thought of that.
And Varys is like, I didn't like girls either. He's like, well, surely
you had to like something.
You like something. He's like, I felt, he's like, after being in this kingdom, for so long, I found the desires are, very dangerous, and like seeing all the trouble it's caused. And I find that by suppressing my own desires, it leaves me free to pursue the things that really matter. Oberyn asks him what that is, and he just looks at the Iron Throne.
Right. And that's the last thing said in the scene.
Yeah.
He looks at the Iron Throne, and then it does a far shot, and then they just kind of walk away from each other.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that was really, really good.
And we know from the past that, Varys was talking to the Lord that was, backing the Targaryens in Season 1. Like, they had that scene that Arya spied when she was hiding inside the dragon skull.
Right.
So, we know Varys is, while he may act like a loyal subject, he's not really beholden to the Lannister family.
Right.
That he always says in very vague terms that he wants what's best for the Seven Kingdoms. And that's what he leaves at. People just... And that's one of those things. It's like it's a statement that you make that people will fill in the blanks. It's like a mirror. You say something like that, people are going to automatically hear what they want to hear out of that. So Cersei hears that, she thinks, okay, good. He wants to protect Joffrey and me and my kids, and everybody who hears that is going to think something different out of it. Because it's such a broad, vague statement.
Right.
But it sounds very positive.
Right.
So I like that. It's going to be interesting to see the role he starts playing as everything moves along. Because just like Littlefinger, we said, kind of he's like the glue that holds the whole thing together, the main character. Varys is another one of those characters that is much more central than, screen time would tell you. And then, of course, that brings us around to the trial.
Right.
Which... God damn. That whole thing, like I said, it's a kangaroo court, I said earlier. Witness after witness coming out telling these stories that, well, not completely untrue, were skewed just enough to make it seem like Tyrion was unprovoked, like a wild animal going after people.
Well, they wouldn't let him tell his side, you know what I mean? Like, he tried. He's like, why don't you tell him why that was going on?
Yeah.
And they just silenced him, you know what I mean? Like, and exactly, it's all stacked against him. And it's stacked against him.
Yeah, well, and it's clear that Cersei is manipulating pretty much every one of the witnesses.
Right.
I would say Varys wasn't completely manipulated, but again, he was doing that whole I'm being vague, so you're hearing what you want to hear thing.
Right.
Although, Tyrion did get to ask him one question, because back in the end of Season 2, Varys did in fact say to Tyrion in front of witnesses that you saved this city, and that his history books will not remember it, but we will not forget.
Right.
And he asked Varys, like, did you forget?
Already?
Varys says, sadly, I don't forget anything.
Right.
Which, again, very vague statement. It could mean anything to anyone hearing it.
Right.
Because he had just testified about how Tyrion had been, unhinged or whatever towards Joffrey.
Right.
So the people in the court were hearing that thinking, oh, well, he's remembering all the awful things he did. Tyrion's hearing that thinking, okay, well, he remembers that I saved this goddamn city.
Right.
And then, they go to it, they have a break.
They go to break.
And Jaime basically begs Tywin for Tyrion's life.
Right.
Saying, I will drop out of the Kingsguard, I will, become your heir at Castle Rock, I'll have kids, I'll do whatever as long as you don't kill him.
And Tywin instantly agrees to it.
I mean, he's like, done.
Yeah, he's like, yep. He's like, and I'll leave the cloak and I'll do this, and you spare his life. Done.
Yeah. Tywin's like, okay, whatever happens, he's going to beg for mercy. I'll grant him that, send him to the wall.
Right.
Like, he had already planned out. Like,
he's like, yeah, that's what's
he was just
happen.
waiting for Jaime to crack almost. Knowing that Jaime loves Tyrion more than anyone else in the family.
Which just shows you that he was playing Jaime. In it too. So
to get what he wanted. I mean, Tywin always gets what he wants.
Right. And so we have that.
Except when he doesn't, because Tyrion is... You can't completely...
Tyrion is his own man, damn it.
He's so unpredictable.
So yeah, they come back in.
And they bring out the next witness, and it's fucking Shay.
I was not expecting that shit at all.
Unfortunately, I was.
Well, you read the book, so you knew, but I was not. Like, I was like, okay, they're gonna finish out the trial. Yeah. They're gonna call some other witnesses, whatever, and then this is gonna happen. And I'm like, and I even told him, I'm like, Tyrion's never been the one to beg. You know what I mean? And so I figured, I'm like, he's probably not gonna do it. Something's gonna happen because of that. I didn't think that they would bring freaking Shay in. Yeah,
and that she would just basically straight up lie.
Right.
Like,
she completely just straight lies. Like, There's no like she left things out to make it look bad,
or she turned around like she would make it seem like Tyrion was like begging her to call him her lion,
right? And
like all these things when she was the one that was like the instigator of all. It was just it's clear that not only was she felt spurned by Tyrion because he basically told her to go get the fuck out,
right?
Which was the smart thing to do, but she didn't really.
She didn't want to hear that.
Yeah, and then it's clear Cersei got to her.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things like the way she went about it. It makes me almost feel that she was in someone's pocket the entire time. That's how it felt. Until she was like, I'm just a whore, remember? When she looked at Tyrion.
Yeah.
And like, okay, she's doing it despite him. At first I was like, wait, is she in someone's pocket?
She's probably doing it. She's doing it to save her own skin, I think. Because remember what Tywin said he would do if he found any more whores?
Right.
Whores in the Tower of the Hand.
So that's very true, too. I was just... When I first saw her, I was like, who bought her?
Yeah.
Was she in someone's pocket the entire time? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, the spite is just like a cherry on top.
Right.
So, yeah, that was awful. And then it drove him to the point, he's like, I confess. And everybody's like, what?
He's like, I want to confess.
Yeah. And then he proceeds to go on the most epic fucking rant I've ever seen on this show. Like, this show has a lot of epic, monologues and dialogue. But this rant was the single greatest thing they've done. Like, the single greatest, monologue they've put on screen. Because he just goes fucking off. He goes off on the entire courtroom. Like, he went from being in, the accused, box to being on a soapbox, and he just went off.
Some of the higher points in the speech, I wish that I had the poison to kill every single one of you.
Yeah. It'd be worth dying just to see all of you choke.
Right.
It's he's like, I saved this city. I saved all of your worthless lives. I should have let Stannis kill all of you.
That was another good one. I've been on trial as a dwarf my entire life. Yeah.
I didn't kill Joffrey, but I wish I had. Watching him die was the greatest release I felt my entire life. I mean,
oh my god,
he was on fire. And Tywin's face, Cersei's face, and then everybody looks shocked as hell, and Prince Oberyn's just kind of like, yeah.
Even Jaime's like, oh my god, what's going on?
Jaime's like, no, I bargained for you.
And then he ends it all.
Yeah.
Last line of the episode. It's like, I will not be judged. I will not go down for the death of a king I did not kill.
I will not be judged by the likes of you.
Right.
I will be judged by the gods. I demand trial by combat.
And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah.
And scene. And oh my god. I was like, as I remember he said that, and I was like, they're going to end it here, aren't they? This is the end of the episode, isn't it?
Yep.
And then it's cut to credits. I was like, oh god, no, next week.
Why can't it be next week already?
Be next Sunday already. Such a good ending to this episode.
Yeah.
Probably the favorite ending to an episod we've had so far in the series.
There's been a lot of good endings, too.
There has been.
The dragons being born, Ned's beheading, the White Walker army. I mean, you think about it, there's been a lot of amazing
endings to...
This show is a show that really knows how to make that last scene count.
Right.
There might be parts of the episode that are a little meandering, a little messy, but almost every episode always has a pretty solid fucking end. They know exactly how to end each chapter of their story.
Right. And Peter Dinklage, I knew he was a good actor.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. He's been in this, for, a while now.
Yeah, he's been in the game for
he's a really good actor. The way he looked, the rage that he projected while he was giving the speech.
Oh, my God.
It makes me have such high hopes for what we might see in the upcoming X-Men movie.
Yeah.
And it's just... he's such a great actor.
Well, and I wonder because the part about being on trial my whole life for being a dwarf. I wonder how much he drew on maybe real life experiences because even though he's a world famous and beloved actor, he wasn't always.
Right.
There were parts of his life. I mean, he was a regular person, and no doubt he got the shitty end of the stick daily.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I wonder how much of that he was able to kind of summon those memories of just being mistreated or being, mocked, and was able to really just kind of imbue his performance with all that rage. And if maybe it was like a catharsis, like after he was done, he was able to kind of be able to release all that, say it out loud without actually having to really direct it at anybody in his life, but to get those feelings out there and then kind of exercise those demons.
Right.
And then, of course, the world sees it, and they're like, holy shit, look how good he is. Look at this acting. And he's like, yeah, acting.
Yeah, acting. That's what I was doing,
But, basically, in summary, give him another Emmy.
Yes, give him another Emmy, please.
And a Golden Globe while you're at it. Because that scene alone, you put that scene up there during the Emmys, you're going to go, the whole crowd's just going to be standing and cheering and hooting and hollering.
Right.
Because
I just think,
that shit was epic.
You know, I know you've read the book, so you already know. My big question is now, who is going to fight for him? And
you know, we'll go,
I know Bronn will if he pays him, but I don't think he's going to choose Bronn to fight for him. I think that
he doesn't get to choose.
He doesn't get to choose.
Well, I mean, he didn't last time. Remember,
well, right,
he chose Jaime, but they didn't make him.
Right.
So yeah, he does have the choice. So now this is Todd knowing the truth and you not. Who do you think? Who
do I think is going to, or is he going to choose?
Either or. Who do you think is going to end up being in Tyrion's corner?
It's I want to say it's Jaime, but I can't place it completely. You know what I mean? I want to say Jaime will stand up and fight for his brother.
And defy his family.
But I don't know if he will or not at this point. I really hope it's Jaime. I really want it to be Jaime, but I still have that inkling in the back of my head where I'm like, I do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, you know, what will it cost him if he does? You know what I mean? It'll either A, his life, or B, his family.
Yeah,
so
and Jaime's in a tricky situation because he's the only person in the family that genuinely loves Tyrion.
Right.
But you gotta keep in mind he's also in love with Cersei.
Right.
No matter what happens, you know, that's his one true love. Like his whole life, he's never been with any other woman.
But he was willing to give that up for Tyrion's life.
Well, he was willing to give up his role as the Kingsguard, basically.
Right.
Something that he had chosen for himself at an early age. You know, he'd already defied the oaths of the Kingsguard so many times, it's kind of pointless.
Right. But, I mean, he was willing to go back to Castle
he was willing to sacrifice his freedom.
Right.
So that Tyrion would still live.
Right.
That was kind of the gist of that. But that's not openly defying Cersei.
Right.
And what her wishes are.
Right.
You know, it's a bit different to fight, you know, put your life on the line for your brother against whoever she would choose as the champion to oppose him.
Right.
Because she's the accuser. He's the accused.
Right.
So he's going to trial by combat against whoever. So
she could choose. Yeah.
So Jaime would be putting himself basically in the point where Cersei would have to choose somebody to either kill her own brother and love her, or end up looking weak and then letting Tyrion get off scot-free.
Right.
So
it's interesting because if Cersei does choose Jaime, who, you know, that's in itself is going to be ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like,
either way, if Jaime gets chosen to be thrown into that, either way, he's screwed.
Right.
I mean, he
loses his brother,
but he always has the right to refuse. But then if he refuses, then it's even more of a fucking scandal.
Exactly.
So
he loses his brother, or he loses his life. So that's. I'm very interested to see how this is going to pan out.
Yeah.
Next episode, hopefully next episode, because the next episode is called Mockingbird, and so that was Littlefinger's.
That's Littlefinger's symbol he's chosen.
So I'm hoping that they're not gonna. They probably will. I could see them doing it where they're gonna. We're gonna shift focus over here. And we'll come back to what happens to Tyrion in a couple episodes.
The thing is, and this is kind of the problem with this book, especially the third book of the series, is that there is so much going on.
Right.
That you want to give it adequate screen time.
Right.
But you can't be beholden to stick around for too long.
Right.
Like, honestly, Daenerys' story I kind of already peaked. So we're going to see less of her the rest of the season, I think.
Yeah, probably.
We're going to need to see a lot more of Jon and the Wall because of the invasion that's coming. We need to see a lot more of Littlefinger and what's going on there with the Eyrie. We need to see a lot more of Tyrion, what's going on at King's Landing.
Right.
So those feel like those are the three places we need to really focus on now. And we're going to see less of the other characters. We kind of got, Ramsay and Theon moving one way, Daenerys is doing her thing. That's kind of, at this point now we have to start really, tightening the focus because there's a lot of shit that still has to happen. Right. And only 4 episodes left to do it in.
Right. And I know, they had the preview for the next episode, the mountains in it.
Yeah.
And, we're going back to the Eyrie. to see what's going on with Sansa and Littlefinger and you know her family.
Yeah, Lysa.
Lysa
the crazy.
And yeah, so it's I really that part of the story going on is really the stuff that I don't care about the most right now. Because I've never really Sansa's never been really one of those characters that I was like, oh, what's going to happen to Sansa? You know what I mean? Like, she's always just kind of been there. Like, she survived her father's death and was kind of like, oh, okay.
Her character from the in the beginning was kind of meant to be a late bloomer as far as her impact to the story and the level of interest you have in her. At first, you almost despise her. She's like a counterpoint to Arya, who we still need to see a lot more of this season as well. She'll be in the next episode we saw. But you know, Arya was the kind of the independent, plucky one. Sansa was the one that kind of was, you know, dreaming the big dream with a fairy tale dream, and was also kind of a, you know, stuck up, annoying little brat. And so her character was you know, designed to be like this late bloomer that didn't really come into her own until much later than the other characters. And that's starting to happen now. Like this season, you know, last season, she started really coming into her own. And so now I think as going forward, she's going to become more interesting and more complex each week. And which is good because, you know, most of the characters are kind of set in stone at this point, and we're just watching their adventures. But you know, with her, we're still seeing, you know, a development. We don't know who she's going to become yet. You know, she's very much a work in progress. So I'm interested in that. You know, the same thing in the book. I got more interested in her story the longer it went. Because, like I said, you can start seeing hints at what this is actually going to become. And the fact that she's being mentored by Littlefinger poses very interesting questions for the future of this realm.
It definitely does.
Because he even says in the preview, you know, what would you do, you know, to get back at the ones who've hurt your family? So, I mean, there's something going on. There's going to be something bigger happening there that we just have to kind of wait to see what's going to develop.
What's going to happen with it,
But I think we're at the 40-plus minute mark. I think that'll do it for this week. Great episode. Really glad you listened. As always, you can go to podcastzoom.com to find our regular podcast, all our Spoilercast, all our Let's Play video game videos. Follow us on Twitter. You can get us on like us on Facebook. We're all up in that business. Subscribe us on iTunes and Stitcher. And,
you said about everything. I was going to add something and I went, I'm just going to repeat what he said. Like I do every week. So. On
behalf of the podcast to do, I'm that guy Todd.
And I'm Friar Dan.
And remember, you listen or you die.
Don't die.
Dying's bad.